The first Kinnah recited during the day, Shavas Suru Meni, was written by the most prolific of all Paitanim, the author of many of the Piyutim, Rabbi Hakalir, means that everything came to a standstill. When we think about these words, Shavas Suru Meni, that everything stopped all of a sudden, we get the impression that the Charban was a sudden and unexpected event. It was so sudden that Chazal described the fact when there were two halves of Jerusalem, those who were aware of the impending destruction and calamity, and those who were blissfully ignorant about what was going to occur. And the Rav points out that the Haftarah in Parshas Bahar, where Hashem tells Yirmiyahu to leave Jerusalem to go up to Anatot and to purchase a field from his uncle, that when he left, the Beis HaMikdash was intact. It was on its foundations. The Kohanim had not moved from their place. They were performing the avodah as if nothing had threatened their routine, as if Yerushalayim still had the same divine protection they had been afforded for years. Vayeshev Yehuda v'Yisrael avetach ish tachas gofno v'tachas tenaso, each man under his grapevine, under his fig tree. But that when Yirmiyahu returned from making the real estate purchase, the transaction, he found the Beis HaMikdash was gone. In other words, there are people who are unaware about what was going to happen, and then there is sort of the warning of the Navi that nobody pays heed to, and that he himself experienced this cognitive dissonance. You can hear the warning signs from the prophets. You could hear them 1,000 times. You could read the news forecasts. But there exists a dissonance during times of tragedy, times of upheaval, where the human mind simply refuses to acknowledge that which it fears most and that which it knows intuitively to be true. When the Hitnaklut took place in 2005, when 21 Israeli settlements in the Gush Katif were uprooted by government order, so I had the opportunity this past year to spend time with the person who headed up from a military standpoint, Brigadier General Gershon HaKohen, who subsequently and frequently has declared pretty adamantly and vociferously that the entire disengagement was a big debacle, ill-conceived. It was a colossal failure in his mind. A disastrous event for the state of Israel, for its emotional, its physical, its spiritual well-being. But he shared a story which took place when he was there. If I seem to recall the story, there was a woman who refused to leave her home, and they called him in, the General HaKohen, to try to coax her to leave her home. And there she was, sitting, reading from a siddur or tehillim that she had received, clutching it in her arms. And she said to the general that when she was in Olah Chadasha, she received the very same siddur, that tehillim, from General HaKohen's father, Rabbi, who had promised her that if she prays from that siddur, nothing would harm her, that she should surely be protected. And she wanted him, the general now in charge of the Naklut, of the disengagement, to look at that siddur, to read from it himself. That was her promise that all would be all right. When the religious figureheads, when institutions, when old sayings, when old values seem to guarantee us that all will be okay, and then all of a sudden there's a dissonance and it crashes, and the history and the values we knew seem to let us down, there's a real sense of devastation, a moral and religious loss. How many times do we have to call for the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, the coming of the Mashiach, and we say it over again, and the words just they roll off our lips already. They're like the end statement of every sermon. It talks about the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, but at some point you no longer believe the words you're uttering. You no longer believe the words yourself. There's a dissonance between that which you knew and the reality you suddenly are thrust upon. The Piyut says, Nafla odenu b'tzul dechuya. Jerusalem has fallen. She remains sunk in her watery depths. Where is the Bimhera Yivana Beis HaMikdash? Where is the soon it will come, soon the Mashiach will happen? Eini chikta l'chazon ben brachia. My eyes long for the vision of Zechariah, the son of Barachia. Ad pil'ei Gilgal chavuya, until we are shown miracles like those of Gilgal. That prophecy is hidden from us. Eini me'oleles b'yavanas nechuya. My eye brings forth tears because we are crippled by quicksand. I was told the prophecies, I was told the promises, but they're not true. They're not happening. That which I thought was a reality is not really coming into fruition. And that's a painful crash. When the religion you've touted, when the God you've celebrated is difficult to find. That's the first Kinnah we say on Tisha B'Av morning, where we recall the fact that we once had faith and at some point we lost faith. And that painful reality has to come to a close. Al eile ani vochia, on these I cry. I cry for the loss of faith, for the loss of emunah, the simple faith of people who invested in a land and in a value system and a Torah that for whatever reason right now doesn't seem to be paying off. Bimheri Yibaneh Beis HaMikdash. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu rebuild the temple very soon. But until such a point, we have to be able to hold on to the faith that we have, to not be deterred by the dissonance, by the conflicting values and the conflicting realities of our lives that seem to deter us and push us away from our emunah.